Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of the foundation course in online art therapy. I'm really excited this week because we are going to be looking at how to create online groups. And so I'm going to be giving a little presentation and we're going to be doing a lot more in the live session, different activities that will support you. So we're going to start with this. So I would love to share with you that, in week 7, we're kind of at this place of beginning to get most of the skills now. We're kind of building an incredible skill base and really starting to know who we might be as online art therapists. So this week in this presentation, we're going to be covering online group delivery and other factors and Yalom's therapeutic factors and group norms and how they relate to online therapy. So for some of you, this will be revision, looking at Yalom, but I always find that he's such an essential figure in doing this work and especially doing online. And so if we always bear these factors in mind, we're really helping to create an incredible group experience for people. So group delivery. So who you want to be thinking about who the client is. That's going to be your number one thing that you're going to be focusing on. You want to think about the degree of structure that you might have within the group environment. You also want to be thinking about your expertise. How much do you know? What is going to be relevant for you to share with your clients? Are there psychoeducational pieces that you might want to share? For example, recently I've been doing a lot more around the nervous system and somatics because I've been studying that, and I'm finding that really is beginning to come into my work and a lot more, and really do psychoeducational pieces for people around fight or flight or freeze and how to calm the nervous system down. So that's just one example of how you might be using it. You also want to think about the communication you choose. So that's going to be really really in creating the container and the group norms. You also want to be thinking about the platform. You might do Zoom, you might do all other kinds of different groups. So groups can range from little structure to formal process, groups and structured topic focused psychosocial educational groups. So groups with a broad selection criteria, drop-in membership and minimal structure are often more difficult for the leader to maintain and may lack cohesiveness. Process and treatment groups with restricted memberships are usually smaller and more tightly controlled. So some delivery modes that you might think about and that are available to the group therapist today include Zoom groups, chat room groups, email groups, and signal or text messaging. So you might want to think about doing one of those, or you might actually do a combination of those. You might have a Zoom group, but you might have a homework task in the middle that people could do on text, on signal messaging in order to kind of keep something going. Maybe there's prompts, maybe there's other meetings during the week, or there's emails that get sent out. So really thinking about the structure that you want to create. So what to consider? So we want to think about group rules and norms, which we're going to go into in a bit more in a minute. It's a therapist's role to set and hold the container of the group norms. So you'll be thinking about that now, before even you have any people, you'll be thinking about who you want in the group. What kind of group do you want? What is that you're trying to create and cultivate even now? So you'll base the people you choose for your group based on the qualities that they bring and what you want the group to achieve. You'll be thinking about confidentiality and safety. So you'll be thinking about verbal and as an actual formal contract and getting people to sign that. You'll also be thinking about cultural diversity. What are people's backgrounds and needs? How can you address them in the group environment? And also, how can you do that within the online environment? So really kind of checking in, other people that need extra support. Is there something that's arising for people? Is the technology suited to what you're trying to do? So norms of the group are constructed both from expectations of the members and expectations of the members for their group and from the explicit and implicit directions of the leader and more influential group members. If the members' expectations are not firm, then the leader has even more opportunity to design a group culture that in his or her view will be optimally therapeutic. The group leader's statements to the group play a powerful, though usually implicit role in determining the group norms established by the group. So this is a really important thing. We really want to be thinking about how these group norms are going to be playing out, how you're going to create this container. And as I spoke about last week when we looked at doing open studios, having some information before that allows the tone to be set and gives information is really, really helpful for participants, because it really allows them to feel into what's important and what's going to be significant within the group formation and how they should behave. So, group norms and therapeutic factors. The ideal therapy group has norms that permit the therapeutic factors to operate with maximum effectiveness. And we're going to be going into looking at the therapeutic factors in a minute. So norms are shaped both by the expectation of the group members and by the behavior of the therapist. The therapist is enormously influential in norm setting. In fact, it is a function that the leader cannot avoid. You know, it's often that we think, oh, we're just creating a group and it will flow however it wants to. But it's actually, we have this incredible opportunity to help shape it and mold it and contain it so that people feel safe, so that these different therapeutic factors can emerge in a really powerful way that is actually life-changing and really healing for people. So norms constructed early in the group have considerable perseverance. The therapist is thus well advised to go about this important function in an informed and deliberate manner. So the therapist models the norms. So we're always creating that behavior that we're hoping that people are going to imitate. So behavior by group members may be rewarded by a nod or a smile, or addressing them warmly, or shifting their posture to be more receptive. So although few self-respecting therapists like to consider themselves social reinforcing agents, nevertheless, therapists continue to exert influence in this manner, unconsciously or deliberately. They may positively reinforce behavior by numerous verbal and nonverbal acts, including nodding, smiling, leaning forward, on offering an interested or in a direct inquiry for more information. On the other hand, therapists attempt to extinguish behavior not deemed salubrious by not commenting or not nodding, ignoring the behavior, turning their attention to another client, looking skeptical, raising their eyebrows, and so on. So it's really important that we really kind of take on this identity. It's like we are creating this container. We are shaping how people perceive the group, how they react and interact within it. If you remember as well, last week we looked at that diagram as well, where the therapist was kind of in the middle, and then there was like relationships to all of the clients. And really what we're trying to do is to create cohesion. We want the clients to be interacting with each other and not just the therapist as a central point. So Yalam's 11 primary therapeutic factors. And so I know this is revision for some of you. For others, it may be the first time that you're seeing it. So he has 11 factors, and they're the installation of hope, universality, imparting information, altruism, the correct recapitulation of the primary family group, development of socializing techniques, imitative behavior, interpersonal learning, group cohesiveness, catharsis, and existential factors. So we're going to look at each one and how that might appear within the online group environment and how we can also cultivate that. So, installation of hope. So group members value and gain hope from other members who are on the spectrum of what they are dealing with. It's important to name improvement in the group to promote the hope of others. So an example of this is when I was running the Open Studio and someone was diagnosed with cancer. And there was also another woman in the group who had just completed their chemo and was experiencing a return of life force energy. So this was really important. Even though this wasn't a specific group based on cancer and surviving it, there was still somehow the magic of, as you all know, that happens in groups where people come together and, you know, there's this shared experience. So it was incredibly powerful, and it allowed somebody who had just literally been feeling the fear and I don't know if I can get through this, and really allowed her to have hope that things were gonna be okay for her. So the group therapist can capitalize on this factor by doing whatever we can to increase the client's belief and confidence in the efficacy of group mode. This task begins before the group starts, in the pre-group orientation. So the therapist reinforces positive expectation, corrects negative preconceptions, and presents a lucid and powerful explanation of the group's healing properties. So this might be done in your intake forms. You might write something about this. It can also be done in interviews that you might conduct before. And it's just really, really an important factor. Like, people need hope. They it actually helps them sustain themselves. And the interesting thing is that this is then both held by the therapist and the artist or client. So the next one is universality. So many individuals enter therapy with a disquieting thought that they are unique in their wretchedness, that they alone have certain frightening or unacceptable problems, thoughts, impulses, and fantasies. In early therapy, participants are often relieved to hear that they are not the only one alone, but there are other people in the same boat. So, of course, this is at the core of truth to this. There is a core of truth to this notion, since most clients have had an unusual constellation of severe life stresses and are periodically flooded by frightening material that is leaked from their unconscious. To some extent, this is true for all of us, but many clients, because of their extreme social isolation, will have a heightened sense of their uniqueness. And so one of the things about coming together online is people realize they're not alone. And I think this is a particularly important factor at this time, when people are so socially isolated, that they're actually able to come and share their experience and that they're not alone. So this can even come in the form of a check-in. I've asked people, how has COVID been for you? How are things unfolding where you are? And they'll say something, and then somebody else in the group will say, wow, that's exactly what I've been experiencing. And I thought I was alone. I didn't realize there was anybody else. So almost invariably, our clients experience deep concern about their sense of worth and their ability to relate to others. Groups that deeply benefit from this universality are bulimic, sexual abuse survivors, groups addressing issues around shame or stigma. So there is a soothing of this existential angst. Installation of hope is connected to this. So another way that we can actively create this in the online environment is the same activity and creating a shared directive. So you might choose to do a theme like we spoke about last week, but when you're in a group, you can do a lot more of, kind of deepening, and you're always going to be thinking about the arc of therapy. So in the beginning, you're going to be building trust with them, and then you're going to kind of be going deeper into the journey. So there might be more things that can kind of come up, and then you're going to be supporting them to come out of this journey. And so really thinking about creating a program, either with themes, it might be that they're making spontaneous art, but just the depth of conversation changes. So really thinking about that also when you're planning what activities that you're going to be doing with them. So the next one, imparting information. So education about mental health, the nature of the client's illness or life situations, or general psychodynamics given by the therapist, as well as advice, suggestions, or direct guidance from either therapist or other group members. It might also examine clients' misconceptions or self-defeating responses to their illness or life circumstances. So an example of this is Katie runs an online group called Parenting. It's called Parenting the Whole Child. And it uses the Whole Brain Child book. And so they make art about their relationship with children, but they also focus on a different psychoeducational piece each week, and really start to learn about the brain and the children's brain and what is happening at that time. And so it gives them this information. So it's like, I understand what's going on. And it's the same that I was talking about before within terms of regulating the nervous system. So giving those pieces of information that allow the client to kind of sink in and realize they're not alone, and there's support and there's resources and there's education that can help them make sense of what is happening for them. So altruism. In group therapy, members gain through the act of giving, not only from receiving help. They get the chance to be of benefit to others. Group members offer support, reassurance, suggestions, insight. They share similar problems with one another, which are often accepted more than the therapist's suggestions. So one of the ways this happens in my online group therapy, within my women's groups, is that I encourage, after I've done a share, so this is the structure of how I set it up. So we'll have a check-in, and then after the check-in, we will do a period of art making. I'll explain the theme. Then we come together after and look at the art. So when we look at the art, it's really like about a 10-minute one-to-one with me. So I'm asking them, what do you see? How was your process? And we have a session like that. I do a lot of summarizing, reflecting back, asking more questions. And then I actually check in with them and I say, would you be okay if I open it up to the rest of the group? And they can say no, or they can say yes. And then with a group, I invite them to ask any curiosities, questions, things that are arising for them, remembering that whatever's arising for them is also something for them to look at. It might not, and really not trying to encourage projection onto the art, but more just this curiosity. So that allows them to kind of offer something of themselves. It allows them to share what they see, to frame it from their perspective. And that gives like a really incredible gift to the person, which is much more powerful than the therapist, because it becomes a peer group, which makes it super important and super meaningful. So the corrective recapitulation of the primary family group. So the therapy group resembles a family in many aspects. There are authority, parental figures, peer, sibling figures, deep personal revelations, strong emotions, and deep intimacy, as well as hostile and competitive feelings. The group therapy environment allows for re-exposure to all familiar patterns and ways of being, and allows for these to be explored, remodeled, and healed. So this isn't different to when we're working in real life in a group. It's, it still comes up when we're in the group therapy environment, and people may have transferences on each other, and it could remind you of someone in your family. And so you might find yourself acting out like you do in your family. So in our family is the first experience of being in a group. So it offers us a space to recognize that, and you get a chance to do something different. It's an opportunity. So we're really actively exploring patterns and roles, and then maybe changing our behavior. So for example, if I'm in a group and I suddenly feel like the leader is, an authority figure, and I had a problem with that, before I may have acted in a certain way, but I get to actually look at that, name it, and then change. And then that's what creates a different neural pathway to be formed. And the more that we can play this out and explore within the group therapy environment, the more we create these new neural pathways, which create change. So the next one, development of socializing techniques. Group therapy is often an environment where people can explore how they are perceived and understood in social settings through open feedback. And this is really important in terms of online, because how often are we on Facebook and have this idealized image of who we are, or we're presenting something different than what we really feel. And so for me, it feels like this marriage in the sense of, and I'm in a good marriage. So this marriage of bringing together, being online and presenting yourself, but in a way that's real. So it changes the dynamics, and it changes the way that we think we have to behave within social media. So in some groups, they might also practice role-playing scenarios, which help people act out and feel into what feels good for them within different social situations. Clients who are established in the group have learned how to be helpfully responsive to others, have acquired methods of conflict resolution, and are less likely to be judgmental, and are more capable of experiencing and expressing accurate empathy. And I find that over and over again in the groups that I run, is people become more attuned to that way of being. And that's often linked to our next one, which is imitative behavior. So in groups, clients may model themselves on an aspect of the group members as well as a therapist. Group members learn from watching one another tackle problems. Even if imitative behavior is in itself short-lived, it may help to unfreeze the individual enough to experiment with a new behavior, which in turn can launch an adaptive spiral. So in group therapy, it's not uncommon for a member to benefit by observing the therapy of another member with a similar problem constellation, a phenomenon generally referred to as vicarious or spectator therapy. Imitative behavior generally plays a more important role in the early stages of the group as members identify more with senior members or the therapist. So in fact, it's not uncommon for clients throughout therapy to try on, as it were, bits and pieces of other people and then relinquish them as ill-fitting. This process may have a solid therapeutic impact. Finding out what we are not is progress to finding out what we are. And so this is something that really happens within the online therapy environment as much as face-to-face. We really see like people like, really like looking at what's going on, how people are talking, and especially like in the last model that I talked about with actually sharing feedback, they're using the therapist and using each other and imitating that behavior to develop like kindness and, genuine interest so that they're really able to be a part of the group and follow the group norms. So our next one is interpersonal learning. We have been shaped by the relationships we have experienced, and we have developed behaviors in response to getting our needs met. Group members, through feedback from others, self-reflection, self-observation, become aware of significant aspects of their interpersonal behavior, their strengths, their limitations, distortions, and behaviors. The group member realizes that they have the power to change and does this gradually by taking risks within the group and then into their world. So group cohesiveness, which I think is really actually one of the most important factors and something that actually we really have to be aware of when we're working online, because it isn't as easy as being in a group. We really have to cultivate these things like we do, when we check in at the beginning and we get it to pass it by name to people. And so that's something we can do in the open studio environment, but that's also something we can do in this group environment because it just reinforces the bonds. It really allows there to be much more of a sense of cohesion and how we pass and cultivate our relationship to each other. And it may seem very simple, but it actually feels really profound, especially in this time of COVID. So certain clients may obtain greater benefit from certain group therapy than from other approaches, particularly clients dealing with stigma or social isolation or those seeking new coping skills. Members of a cohesive group feel warmth and comfort in the group and a sense of belongingness. They value the group and feel in turn that they are valued, accepted, and supported by other members. Group cohesiveness is not fixed, but fluid. It's important that the therapist creates an environment of engagement and cohesion from the start to help weather later stages. So groups with a greater sense of solidarity or we-ness define the group more highly and will defend it against internal and external threats. Such groups have a higher rate of attendance, participation, and mutual support, and will defend the group standards with much more than groups with less esprit de corps. It is critical that groups become cohesive and that leaders be alert to each member's personal experience within the group and quickly address problems about cohesion. So in the beginning, the therapist is the leader of the group. And after some time, there's more of a feeling that this is our group. And I've seen that happen over and over again in my women's groups. It's been really fascinating. Like I start off where like really everybody is focused on me. And then the more we go on, the more I try to create dialogue between each of them rather than just me holding the space. So it's really much more about the interconnectedness and the feeling of relationship between them and shared experience. So another thing that Yalom identifies is catharsis. And so catharsis is viewed as Catharsis was viewed as part of an interpersonal process. It's more valued in the later stages of group development rather than earlier because often it can scare people. So this can include emotional expression and disclosure. So if we're looking again at the arc of therapy, it's going to come like more middle towards the end before we're kind of coming out and re-emerging to the world. Catharsis in itself is not therapeutic and needs to be linked to understanding. And that's a really important part. We need to have context for it. We need to have understanding around it and integration. So it can be really destabilizing, and it's also interesting how we can hold it in the group, especially when we have the disinhibition effect, where people feel more safe, so they're more able to express. So we're really holding this piece of like, and putting really firm boundaries around it. Like, what is acceptable in your group? What is going to let people feel safe? What is going to let people have a sense of catharsis, but also that it's limited and that people are not going into like deeply into their trauma and not able to get out of it. You know, we're really thinking about the trauma vortex of going into the trauma and then coming out again. And then maybe in the next, going in a little bit, coming out again. So we're always trying to do that. And lastly, we have existential factors, which is recognizing that life is unfair and unjust, recognizing that ultimately there's no escape from some of life's pain or from death, recognizing that no matter how close I get to other people, I must still face life alone, facing the basic issues of my life and death, and thus living my life more honestly and being less caught up in trivialities, learning that I must take ultimate responsibility for the way that I live my life, no matter how much guidance and support I get from others. So all of these factors relate to existential. To confront, it's basically the confrontation of the human condition. And it can feel really intense and a bit like depressing to me anyway, when I look at these factors. But then I can also see like how much people can get from being in groups and how much there is a meaning formed. And you get to touch on these parts that are painful, but within a group environment that feels like there is this sense of I'm not alone. Actually, there are people who have been through this and they've got through this, and cultivating this sense of hope. So it's really linked to universality, and it takes us into the experience of being human. We're connected and we're still alone, finding our purpose. So some things that really can help people with any of these factors that are coming up within your groups are nature-based groups. So thinking about the seasons and the connection to nature. So you might run a group that may be online, but it's still made out of natural materials, or when the weather's a bit warmer, you might get people to go outside and actually take their computers, because we do have Wi-Fi outside. And so what can it be if you kind of create from that? So especially if that kind of issue is coming up for your group. You might also be thinking about grief and loss. So that's cycling again. And existential factors also often come up for people that have addictions as well. So in the live session, so we will be focusing in the live session on how to design your group. I'm going to give you a series of questions that are going to really help you. And then I'm also going to give you a checklist, which I'm going to upload onto this page, which should be down below or to the side. And so what I'd like you to do is please don't start it now, but please print it out, or at least have it as a reference for when we do the live session, because we will be working through it then. I'm also going to talk about selling pages for groups and what to include, what kind of things are going to like let people know that this is for me, this group is for me, and I want to join it. And we're also going to do a little bit on online intake forms as well. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I also wanted to show this slide because I used a template that was created by SlidesGo, and they ask you to share it. So I hope that you have enjoyed that, and it's going to give you some insights. For me, I'm always thinking when I'm running groups about how these 11 therapeutic factors are going to be amplified by what I am doing as a therapist. I'm also thinking about the group norms, how I can create the container, and also how different qualities are going to come out in different ways. I love to work in Zoom, but it's not the only way. So I really invite you to find a way that feels right. I know that we've talked before about maybe having like emails that appear every day. You could also do like text messaging. So whatever feels right for you. And I look forward to answering your questions within the session. If you have any others, please fill out the form, and I hope to cover them in the live session. Thanks, everyone. Bye.